I want to share a little bit about power and love. And if you look at the world right now, you can see a great rising up of resistance from people who value their freedom against those who have power. So I want to talk a little bit about why power is so addictive and maybe bring some clarity into what's happening in human consciousness at this time. So, to do this, we need to understand the Taoist cosmology, and we need to understand that the root of causality is something called Tai. In other traditions, they would call that God, but in the Tao, we don't have a definition of some sort of being, right? It's the Qi, it's the life force. So, at that level of causality, it's pure creation, right? Pure creation and pure love. So you could define that as power and love, because to be able to create something out of nothing is a form of power, right? And so we all have that inside of us. We have that power in our minds, and we have the power of love, in every single cell in our body, but it's usually localized in the heart, okay? So what I want you to understand is what happens is when people get a certain amount of power, it's addictive, right? So, you could say that the stage that human beings go through is, first of all, they accumulate wealth. And once they have wealth, they realize, oh, I'm not satisfied. And then they go to the next one, which is power, right? And that's what you're seeing playing out in the world right now, is this addiction to power. And why is it addictive? Well, because it's almost like a truth, because Tai creates out of nothing. But the difference between people who have power and Tai is that Tai also loves everything it creates, and it recognizes that everything is connected, right? So when you get a certain amount of power in the world, it's addictive, because it makes you feel like God. It makes you feel like, well, I've got this causal power. If I say this, I can make this happen. Okay? If I say this, if I do this, if I put my energy here, if I throw enough money at something, I can make this happen. That's power. That's a certain amount of personal power. But if it's not tempered with love, with the feminine principle, it's just an awful result, right? A terrible result. Because you don't feel that love, and so you just want more and more power. Okay? Now, you might say to yourself, oh, but I don't do all that abuse that those other people are doing, those people that have a lot of power. I don't do that. But I would invite you to really look at that, because we all do it on some level. Like we all want more power than we do love. We don't want to get that balance. We don't want to get them in balance and harmony inside ourselves, right? It's addictive power, right? It's great, that it's a fantastic thing to create out of nothing, right? And to see that you're causal, that you can create something, right? And the reason we resonate with that so much, think about that whole teaching around the secret, right? Dr. Joe Dispenza is teaching that as well. And it's funny, I just put a comment on one of his posts where he's talking about, how to create, by already imagining it's happening. And I just left him a question. I said, well, how do you know your desires are in alignment with your highest destiny? How do you know that, right? Because oftentimes what our soul wants is very different to what the personality wants. So oftentimes the personality is seeking this power. Actually, what it's really seeking is love and power. Or I would redefine that love as creativity. Okay? So I've watched this in myself. I've watched how sometimes the power in me overcomes my love. And it's, I don't judge myself about it. I just watch it. And it's because on some level, yeah, it's an addiction, you know. So I hope this is helpful for all of you. And one of the most important things I think we can do is not push against people with a lot of power. Because if we do that, we're almost judging the life force. We're almost judging the creative aspect of the life force. We're saying, oh, those people are evil. And so we keep them in power and we diminish our own ability to create, right? So every time you say, oh, look what that person did, blah, blah, blah. Now, of course, there's discrimination in this, right? Discrimination in how you perceive those people, right? If it's just out of a place of recognizing that they're, of seeing clearly what they're doing, which is, there's an addiction there, right? So actually, when I see people like this, I have compassion. I used to push against them. I used to think like they're evil, they're going to destroy the world. And that may be a truth, But the point here is that we shouldn't push against them. We should acknowledge that we have that power within ourselves. We may not have the same reach as these billionaires and all these other people, right? But we do have that creative power. Every one of us has it within ourselves. Yeah. Okay, so I hope this is helpful for all of you. Lots of love.